So I found out the beginning of 2007. It was like the end of 2016 when I initially noticed some things in my appearance, which made me start going to the doctor, which I noticed the whites of my eyes were yellow a little bit, you know. So I went to the doctor, and about time I was diagnosed, it was the beginning of 2017. And my doctor, which at that time, a doctor in Fairhope, Alabama, was the one who diagnosed me. He diagnosed me with primary sclerosing cholangitis, which is an autoimmune disease that is very rare. And so something, it just, I was, at the time, I was living in Pensacola, Florida. Fairhope, Alabama is about 45 minutes to an hour away from Pensacola. And what at that hospital, you know, in Fairhope, Alabama, it was about 45 minutes to an hour. And my doctor was just kind of scared to tell me, or I'm not going to say he was scared, but he didn't know how I was going to take it because I was at the appointment by myself. And so he was just kind of like, do you have someone at home that can help you? And I was like, well, I live by myself. This is how he started the appointment off. And, you know, after he had did testing on me and he knew what was going on, and this is how he started the appointment to diagnose me. And then the next question he asked me was, who do I, you know, he asked how long it was going to take me to get home. And I told him about 45 minutes to an hour. And then he just came out and he said, look, he said, I don't know the easy way to tell you this. And he said, I don't know how to really tell a 27-year-old this that lives on their own. But he said, you know, he, you know, told me what I was diagnosed with. And he told me that without having major surgery, you won't live long and you'll eventually get very, very sick. And he was just like, I don't know, you know. And, you know, after that, he told me, and I didn't say anything. I was just a blank stare because I just wasn't really expecting it, you know. I was hoping that that wasn't the news that I was going to get. And being that, you know, I was young and I'm still young, but being that I was 27 and I just feel like I have my whole life ahead of me. I have no kids. I have so many things that I want to experience in life. I just didn't know, you know, what to think or how to feel. And I can be very emotionless. And so, and I blame it on me being an Aquarius, but I could be very emotionless. And when he told me that, I just went, like, just stared, like I showed no emotion. And he told me, he's just like, I don't know, you know, how do you feel? I just really didn't know how to tell you this, you know. And so, you know, I told him I was dealing with it okay. And when I left my appointment, I bust out crying. I did. And the first thing I did was call my dad and talk to my dad about it. But the ride home, after I did get off the phone with my dad, the ride home, I just really just thought, and, you know, and that weekend, because that doctor's appointment was on a Friday. So that weekend, I just kind of stayed in bed the whole weekend and I just was kind of down. And, you know, I was upset, of course, and I cried and I prayed, and, you know, I disclosed the information to some close friends, but I didn't really tell anybody. And throughout my whole liver transplant journey, I really didn't open up and tell a lot of people, just because I don't know why. For some reason, I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed by it, and I didn't want people to feel sorry for me. I didn't want people to just feel like they had to be nice to me and just treat me a certain way because, you know, I had an autoimmune disease and I was sick, and, you know, I was seriously ill. So, and I didn't want to, you know, talk about it a lot of times. I didn't want people just asking me a bunch of questions. So I kept a lot of it to myself. Next, you know, I'm just going to talk about some of the things that, some of the changes that I noticed in my appearance while I was waiting for my liver. initially after, because what led me to the doctor was the whites of my eyes were slightly yellow, but over time they got darker yellow, and it was very noticeable. And that was just a dead giveaway. Like, looking at me, you couldn't tell that I was sick, but but looking at my eyes, it was a dead giveaway. And that's how people knew that I had something going on with me. I was very self-conscious of my eyes being yellow. I wore my glasses all the time because I felt like it wouldn't make it so obvious and people wouldn't see it, but people still saw it. And so when I talked to people, I wouldn't look them in the eye. I would look down, or because I didn't want them to see it, but people still seen it. And that was very tough. It just really played a part on. I didn't feel pretty anymore. I didn't feel beautiful anymore. I just felt like people would think something is wrong with me. They'll think I'm weird, and so I try my best to hide it, but I couldn't. I mean, those are your eyes. That's the first thing people notice when they look at you. So yeah, my eyes, and eventually they did get dark over time, which I'm gonna insert a picture. I'm new to the editing thing with videos, so if I can't figure out how to insert the picture in, I'm gonna put it at the end of the video. But yeah, my eyes were jaundice, which is the yellow. My skin also was jaundice, which with me being African American, I didn't really look yellow to me, but my skin took on a darker shade. I was like, I got darker. Also with my face, I broke out. I've always pretty much, since I've hit my 20s and got out of puberty, I didn't really experience acne or breakouts or anything like that. And I drink a lot of water. I always have drank a lot of water, so my skin was always really clear. And so I had just bumps and pimples, and they were small. Mostly I just had small bumps, but it was, and that was one thing. My doctor told me that as far as my acne, that wasn't something that would be related to my liver. But and after I had after I had the transplant, my face instantly started clearing up. And I also, insert an after picture of my skin and how it cleared up instantly, after surgery. Let's see. I had very dry skin, which I never experienced that in my life. I used to always have oily skin, like especially on my face, but being before my liver transplant, I had very dry skin, especially on my face. One symptom that I had that drove me crazy was the itching. I itched so bad. One thing that I did start doing, I used Dove soap for sensitive skin, and it kind of helped with the itching. I made sure that when I took showers, I didn't take really hot showers, and I try not to stay in there for a long time because that would make my itching worse. So I itched pretty much bad. I also would use anti-itch lotion. That helped me a lot, and when I itched, it was in weird spots, like my feet and the palms of my hand would itch really bad. But yeah, my feet and the palms of my hand. And then tiredness. I was just like, I was tired all the time. It was like I just felt like I was never well rested. Weight gain. Yeah, I had gained a lot. I'm going to say a lot of weight, but I want to say at least 15 pounds. And a lot of it was just like, I feel like it was bloating, because right after surgery, they weighed me before surgery and they weighed me the day after surgery, and I instantly lost like 11 pounds. So I think it was a lot of fluid buildup that was causing me to gain weight. Most of my weight was in my stomach. I was bloated, so it was bloating. So it was hard for me because a lot of my clothes, like a lot of my pants, couldn't fit anymore. They were just very uncomfortable. And I was getting a lot of people were just saying a lot of things to me. People don't think. That's another thing. If you're waiting on a liver transplant, any organ, and it's affecting things with your body and affecting your appearance, do not let people get to you by just some of the things that they said. I've had people ask me, was I pregnant? I had people look in my eyes and tell me my eyes were yellow, like I didn't already know that, and that was something I was very self-conscious about. I just had people say things to me, and it's just hard. I think the most self-conscious or I got was when someone pulled me to the side and asked me, was I pregnant? I just felt, it made me feel so bad about myself. But not I was I felt like I had to throw up a lot of the times and I didn't. I got to a point where I did vomit blood on two different occasions. One time it was, well, both times they ended up stays in the hospital, but one time was worse than the other, which I'm gonna get into that later on. The time that I vomited blood and ended up in the hospital, I would feel dizzy. A lot of the times I went through a period at work where for weeks I felt dizzy, and I did not disclose this to anybody, but I was walking around work and I just was very, very, very dizzy. And I'm so glad that I got through that because, I had, if you're, like me, you can't afford to just because you're sick, life goes on, you have bills to pay. And I had to work while I was waiting on, liver transplant. And, I'm so glad and thankful that I have a job and, I worked up into, but it was a lot of days. It was hard. It was hard. You know, my blood pressure a lot of the times would be low. I would know that because I would go to the doctor and they would tell me my blood pressure was low when I did have appointments, or at my job in the lab, one of my coworkers had actually did my blood pressure for me. One time I had him checking, it was normal, but one time he checked it and it was low. So yeah, and then I had lightheadedness sometimes, and then there was also times where I just felt like I was unwell, like a general, like you just feel sick and but you can't really explain it, but you just feel ill. There was a lot of times I felt like that. Also loss of appetite, which, you know, it was just so weird to me because my appetite was not the same. I was rarely eating and I was gaining weight. So, yeah. So I'm going to talk about now, last year, July 3rd, 2018. That's the night that I actually had vomited a bunch of blood and I fainted in my house and I ended up in the emergency room. But in April of last year, I vomited blood, but it wasn't as much and it wasn't as bad because I was able to drive myself to the hospital. And, I ended up having esophageal varices, which is their veins in your throat. And because of your liver, I was having issues with my liver, of course, and my liver was, what's the word, swollen basically. And so there was a lot of pressure on my liver and it was building up a lot of pressure in those veins. And so, some people get esophageal varices and they burst because of all the pressure that is on those veins. So I actually had banding done to the esophageal varices where they put you to sleep, they go down your throat and they band them so that that'll take some of the pressure off them, that'll stop them from bleeding. So I had that done in April. We'll fast forward to July 3rd, 2018. I was at home. It was about 8 o'clock at night and I was asleep. I was off the next day because it was going to be 4th of July. My parents was coming in town and, We had things planned. We're gonna go to the beach, and yeah. So, well, actually, my parents weren't gonna come in town to the 5th. So that the 4th of July, I was supposed to spend that day with one of my coworkers. She was gonna cook and everything. So anyway, I I woke up in the middle of the night and I threw up a little bit of blood. I felt, my mouth was watering. You know how you feel when you're getting ready to vomit. So I went to the bathroom in my house and I threw up a little bit of blood. And so I didn't think anything much of it, even though I know that was something serious, but it was only a little bit. And I don't know really what I was thinking. I laid back down and I attempted to go back to sleep. And not even 5 minutes later, I was up again. I threw up more blood. And so at this point, I'm just like, okay, this is weird. And I could feel myself getting ready to faint. At this point, I had vomited so much blood that I could my eyes are wanting to close and I'm wanting to just fall out and pass out. So I called my coworker, which at the time, she lived like maybe 5 minutes away from me. And I was just like, can you please come over here? I feel like I'm going to faint, you know. And so she's like, okay, you know. So she came over there and I I could just feel myself just like, I'm like, okay, because I threw up again. And I said, you know what? I don't know if I'm going to make it until she gets here. I attempted to call 911. And I picked up my phone. I dialed 911. And when they said 911, how may I help you? I fainted. My face hit the floor of my kitchen. And when I fell, I got back up. When I fell, I got back up. And so it's like when I hit the ground, it's just like my eyes opened back up again, but my phone hung up in the midst of all this. So at this point, I tried to call my mom, my dad, my sister. Nobody was answering the phone. You find that it's like when you have an emergency situation, nobody wants to answer the phone. And so I crawled. I realized that if I stayed on the ground, that I wasn't gonna faint, and I would stay, awake. So I crawled to unlock my door, so that when my coworker got there, she can just get in. And then I got to the hallway of my house, and I threw up more blood. And at this point, it's like I couldn't control my bowels either, which this is kind of embarrassing, but I used the bathroom on myself too at the same time that I threw up. And so I couldn't move anymore. I was laying in it. At this point, I feel like I had lost so much blood that I just was weak. I couldn't. And I remember I started to pray. I was just like, Lord, I cannot go out like this. I was just like, Lord, please do not let me die. I have so much life to live. There are so many things I want to do. Lord, I do not want to go out with this. Just help me. And so at that point, I said a little prayer to myself, and then my coworker was knocking on the door, and I was just like, come in. And she didn't hear me, and she was saying my name. She's like, Kara. I'm like, Ebony, come in. And I think we said this back and forth for like 10 times back and forth. She finally just tried to open the door and realized it was unlocked. And when she walked in, I would never forget, the first thing she said was, oh my God, don't move. And the reason why she said that is because I'm laying in a puddle of blood, And so she called the ambulance. I went to the hospital. I got to the hospital again, and I vomited more blood. And at this point, when they came to my house to get me, one of the workers took a picture of all the blood that was in the bathroom, because there was some in the toilet, and then I had missed the toilet, so it was blood on the floor. She had took a picture of the puddle of blood that I was laying in. And so when I got to the emergency room, she showed the pictures to the doctor, so they knew, what they were dealing with. And so I explained, I was, you know, awake. I wasn't, passed out or anything. So I was awake and I told them, hey, I have a rare liver disorder, and I'm just telling them all this stuff. And so when I got to the emergency room again, I vomited again. And just the look in my nurse's face, I can kind of tell that she was worried. And the doctor came back in the room, stuck his head in there, and she showed him, the pan of blood that I had threw up. And in I initially, all I remember is I had a blood transfusion. I had an IV in my arm with blood going in there, and then I was out for a few days. When I woke back up, I didn't know what day it was. Anyway, I ended up finding out that one of my veins in my throat had actually ruptured, and that's why I was vomiting all that blood. So I had to have a blood transfusion. They ended up putting a stent in my liver to relieve some of the pressure off of the veins, and that helped. And after that, I didn't have that issue anymore. I ended up staying in the hospital for about 4 days, maybe. And I was living on my own in Florida. So when I got out of the hospital, I moved back home with my parents. And then, which home, so yeah, I moved back home, my parents. And then a month later, I went to Pensacola, Florida to gather my things, and that was it. And I never went back to work or any of it. So, you know, yeah, so I moved back home and I started applying for jobs. I was like, because at this point, you still don't know when you're going to have the surgery. You still don't know. So, life still goes on. And I knew I had to work. So I applied for jobs. But when I moved back home, I just felt like I was a bum. Like, I'm like, here I am. I'm 28 years old. I'm living at home with my parents, which I didn't since I went away in college, I stayed away, So I lived in Pensacola probably for about 3 years. And, and I did, 4 years in college. So that's about 7 years and not living at home to now I'm living at home. I feel like a bum. So, and I didn't have a job. So I just felt like I was severely depressed. There were times that I stayed in my bed for days. I stayed in my bed for days. There were days, I'm not even gonna lie, I didn't shower. There were days where I didn't brush my teeth. I just didn't do anything. When you're depressed, if you ever been in that state of mind where you just didn't care and you just felt so low, that's how I felt. And so I started suffering insomnia. So on top of all this, I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't really answering the phone from my friends. I was just going through a lot. That incident last year it just took me a while to wrap my mind around what was going on, and just me getting sicker, and it was just a lot for me. That incident is what got me on the liver transplant list, because even though you're diagnosed with a disease, you know that you have to be going into liver failure, or you have to have things that are dangerous that, are like life or death that'll get you on the list. And so, after that incident, I, they call it a liver evaluation done, and I was presented, in front of a team of doctors and nurses, and I was fit to be on the transplant list. So I got on the liver transplant list. But anyway, yeah, so it took me 6 months to find a job. I'm thankful for when I did have to move back home. I applied for jobs. My sister applied for jobs for me. My dad applied for jobs for me. There were so many jobs that I had applied for that I didn't know what I applied for, to be honest. I'm not even gonna lie. I just was like, look, I need a job. So when I did get a job, I was very thankful, but I didn't disclose what I had going on health-wise, because like me, I feel like a job would see me as a liability. So I didn't know, what I should do. And I asked people for advice, and a lot of the advice I got was, yeah, that's something I don't think I would tell my employer, and I didn't want to open up. Now, my last job, the job I had in Florida, I had coworkers that knew, and my supervisor knew because I was diagnosed when I was working at jobs. So I had a lot of appointments. I missed a lot of work, from having to go to the doctor, have testing, different things like that. So, just my notes. Yeah, so I'm just looking. So, fast forward into when I actually got the call to get the liver transplant, and then it happened. I was just so thankful, and I was so happy, when it actually did happen. Like, I'm just so thankful, and I'm so happy, and I'm so blessed now, because I just feel like I had a short-lived journey with the whole needing a liver transplant. Some people found out they're sick and they wait years and years and years, like 5 plus, 10 plus years. And, it was like I found out I was sick, got the liver transplant. I found out, I was sick about 2.5 years ago. And it's like I didn't have to go through this for a very, very long time. But the time that I did have to go through it, it just was my mindset and my mind frame had changed, so much. And it's very, very, it's a very, very emotional time. And, I just want to give any advice that I can, or just motivation to anybody that may be waiting on a transplant or waiting on any organ, or find out that they're sick. Just know that it's not the end of the world. Continue to live your life, and, continue to just go after your goals. One thing that I did initially, like when I moved back home, I felt low. Like, I felt like I couldn't date anybody because I felt like I was sick. Like, I told one of my friends, I was like, I'm not even going to get in a serious relationship or look to be with anybody, because I just feel like I'm sick, and I just feel like, this, that, and the third. And she used to say to me all the time, you should not let that hold you back from, enjoying your life, or, dating or anything like that. But it was just my mind frame. I just, so much was changing in my appearance that I just felt ugly. That's one of the reasons why I was just like, I just don't want to be with anybody. I don't want to date anybody. You know and there were so many things that I wanted to do that I put on hold. I wanted to go to grad school, and I was just like, what if I start grad school and I have to have surgery, and I have to, take a time away from school. And what if I just get sick or don't feel good, don't feel like going to class, or this, that, and the third? So I just put a lot of things on hold that I wish I didn't do, because it just, life, your life is not ending, and so you have to think positive. I went through times where I thought negative throughout waiting for my liver transplant. But when I tell you, the last month or so before I had surgery, I prayed pretty much every day going into the surgery. And, I didn't know I was going to have the surgery. A liver transplant, if you're waiting on a deceased donor, it's unplanned. You're waiting on just a phone call that you can get anytime, any moment. So just think positive, pray, and surround yourself with a support system. That's one thing that helped me tremendously. I moved back home, so I was surrounded by my family and my friends that cared about, genuinely cared about me and knew what was going on, and checked on me and encouraged me. And, it just was so, helpful, and it helped me get through a lot. And so when I had the surgery and I got the phone call, I was just at so much peace in my mind, because I was ready. I was ready for it. I mean, I had already felt like I had been through the lowest point of my life, and I'm like, Lord, I know that I have so much more life to live, and I know that everything is going to be okay and that it's all going to work out. And so now that I've had the surgery, I just feel so relieved. Like nothing is holding me back from anything that I want to do, because I feel like I went through that point in my life for a reason, so that I could be thankful for what I have now and where I'm at now in life. I never take anything for granted. And I know that with this experience that I went through, you know, this only make me stronger, only builds me up as a person, and it has done that. I mean, now I think I see the positive in every situation now. I don't see the negative in any situation. And I'm 4 weeks out of surgery. My mindset, my mind frame, I'm just, so much happier, and I'm, just living life and going after things that I wanted to do. I started a YouTube channel, and that's something I've been wanting to do for years. And my sister was telling me, she's been telling me for years to start one. And I went after that because I feel like, look, this is something I've been wanting to do. Now is the time now. Since I went through all that last year, I'm not letting any of that stop me or hold me back from anything that I want to do. So I just feel like, you just have to be encouraged, stay encouraged. Have people around you praying for you, praying with you, you know, getting your mind off of things. Just stay positive, and positive will happen. Law of attraction, you have to think positive in every situation. If you even think a negative thought, has that ever happened to you where you just thought a negative thought and then that negative thought came to life? So don't surround yourself with people who are going to just talk positive, and then positive will happen, and then you'll start to breathe positive and think positive. You just have to, you know, continue to just know that life goes on. You're not the only person in the world that has been diagnosed with something. You're not the only person in the world who's probably been told that, look, without this, you're not going to live. Without this, this is not going to happen, or you're going to die or whatever. You have to know that God has the last say so. So there's no doctor, no anybody in the world who can predict how your future is going to be. Only God can. And so just be encouraged. And yeah, I hope this story, I hope everything I've said, with everything that I went through up until having a liver transplant has helped you, has encouraged you, because I didn't give up and I wanted to so bad. Like I said, I had very, very tough times, and I dread, how I was at the time. I was stuck in it and I really didn't see myself out of it. But when I cleared my mind and I really started to pray about it, and I was at so much peace with it, and I knew that it was all going to work out for me. And so I want you to know that it will all work out for you. And I just want you to be encouraged. Yeah, so I'm thinking about in the future, maybe doing more videos about just my post-liver transplant experience, just my doctor's appointments. So just let me know if you're interested in seeing me, vlog some of my doctor's appointments, or just give some updates on how I'm feeling and how I've been recovering. Yeah, so I hope this story was encouraging for you. I hope it helps you, and I hope to do many more videos for you.
I'm only taking this video of you so you can look back and know the mercy of God and all he could do.